All right, going into the second game of the day. It's going to be on Circuit Breaker yet again, the standard map for pro play these days. In the top left-hand corner, in the red, it is going to be Snow on fire in PvT lately. And in the bottom right-hand corner, in what will be the orange, and I'm sure we'll see it pretty soon, is going to be our Terran player. That is going to be Mind, absolutely tearing it up lately. Get it? Tearing it up? Just kidding, just kidding. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. So, we should see probably a long macro game because we are in these split positions. It's difficult for Terran to actually push out across the map and get a pre-third base timing. Or, sorry, not a pre-third base timing, but like a pre-fourth base timing. That +1, that +2 attack with 170 supply. It's difficult because the middle of the map is very open. If the Protoss player plays it right, they can delay for a very long time while getting up the necessary tools to deal with the push and absolutely crush it. But really it all comes down to execution. If Snow doesn't kite his opponent back properly, he can die almost instantly. There is the possibility for some early pushes. But like I said, because of the size of the map, it's a little bit difficult to actually get over there in a time-effective way. But I expect Snow to probably go for his standard carrier, or sorry, his standard Reaver drop opening. He always goes, recently he's always been going for this Reaver drop opening. And what I like about the Reaver drop opening is it basically allows you to, you get the Reaver drops and you just go into your opponent's base, and it forces the Terran player to sit back. They can't really move out with their tanks because they need at least one tank per mineral line, sometimes usually two, just to deal with the Reaver. And sometimes they'll even actually go crazy and go for an early Goliath just to deal with the drop, and that significantly weakens any early push that they could do. And behind that, you can just take a third. It's 100% safe because you know your opponent can't go for a big tank push. It's a really cool build. We've seen some Terrans counter this build by going for drops of their own. They'll get a fast starport and go for these Vulture drops. And the Vulture drops hit at about the same time that the Reaver gets to the base. So if you don't have any units and you're relying entirely on those Reavers for a lot of your firepower, you end up taking quite a bit of damage in the main to the Vultures. And you have to pull the shuttle back to actually deal with any sort of drop play that comes your way. And so it's pretty interesting the way that whole dynamic works. I'm sure there's another step later on that Protosses are going to figure out, like, oh, maybe if I just drop Zealots instead and defend with Reavers, then somehow that'll turn even. Something like that. I don't know. That could be really cool to see the evolution of that in the future. So we are actually going to see Mind go for a gasless fast expand. This isn't out of the ordinary, but it's not as typical as a gas expansion with a fast tank. The reason why this sort of fell out of style a long time ago is because you can get Dragoons with range as a Protoss player and just start shelling on that bunker from afar, and the Terran has to pull a lot of SCVs. They have to repair the bunker, and it ends up not being that cost effective. Hey Azax, you need to raise your APM. Is this game worth $15? Absolutely. Brew War is the greatest game of all time. Even if you don't enjoy playing the multiplayer, because I'm not gonna lie, the multiplayer in this game is practically impossible to play well. Even if you don't buy it for the multiplayer, just buy it for the campaign. The campaign is so much fun. Even if you beat it with cheat codes, it's really great and it's very immersive. Lots of cool storylines going on. So I highly recommend it. Please spend the $15. Come play with me. It'll be fun. Anyhow, first Dragoon is going to be moving out across the map, just getting a little bit of scouting information. Usually you pull up maybe 3 to go across the map, but Snow feels pretty safe right now. He's not going to be worried about any sort of potential counterattacks that come his way. He got that probe in there pretty early on and got all the information he needed to, so he knows that his opponent is going to be going for this gasless fast expand. And so he just wants to have as many Dragoons in position as soon as Singularity Singularity Charge, is that the name of that upgrade? Is done, so that he can just start attacking this bunker. And oh, whoa, he's actually just going to run this Dragoon straight past. That kind of looked like a mistake, but at the same time, it is going to be very annoying for Mind to deal with. I hear a Zealot somewhere, but I don't see it. This might be a weird desync. Maybe he's listening to another stream in the background. Am I listening to another stream in the background? I think that's important to look, because last time I did this, I was listening to another stream in the background. Wait, oh, there's a Zealot. There's a Zealot that's been hanging out in the main. Interesting. So that wasn't a scouting probe. That was actually scouting Zealot, and Snow actually doing a ton of damage over here. He's actually delayed this factory by quite a bit and killed off quite a few of these Marines, as well as SCVs. And with good micro, he can actually kill off the remainder of these Marines. This is really well played by Snow so far, but I wonder if he's throwing away a little bit too much of his map control. By throwing away this many Dragoons, he might find himself in a position where he has nothing to defend versus the counter swing of tanks. Isaac says, I heard I can play a Russian guy who murders everyone and turns into a tentacle monster. Unfortunately, Stukov doesn't turn into a tentacle monster in this game. That doesn't come until StarCraft 2. But you get to see him. He's actually the good guy in the game. He's a really good guy. Alexei Stukov. But I don't want to spoil the campaign too much for you. It's really enjoyable, trust me. You'll get caught up in the storylines. Snow, uncharacteristically having an AFK probe there in his base. But it looks like he fixed that up now. He knows that it's coming. And that should be a Robo Bay. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Reavers coming out pretty soon to actually deal with this. Jaedong's lagging, which is not good for our viewing pleasure. Trust me, it's not me that's lagging, it's Jaedong. I know. But he's going to continue just putting on the pressure. Now that he's sacrificed all those units, he's just going to sit out front and start shelling down this bunker. And Terran can't really do this until they have a tank. A tank actually I think actually matches the range of a Dragoon without siege mode. But it's okay. He's going to be able to push this back now. And once siege mode is done, it'll be definitively pushed back. You can't stay here with Dragoons while siege mode is up. But there is the possibility that he might be able to run in and snipe it. He does get 1 or 2 hits on that. It was pretty nice. He's going to try to snipe it. Wow, he actually gets the snipe. So, really well played. That's going to delay mine for quite a bit. He's going to have to pull a couple more SCVs to actually deal with this. This has completely screwed up Mine's entire game plan. He's going to be straggling behind for most of the entire early mid-game. And this gives Snow an excellent chance to just play ultra greedy, get tons and tons of probes up, maybe even go for a fast third expansion off the back of this. And he's going to be at a pretty solid spot going into the next couple of minutes. There is our... Wow, he actually hid the support bay outside of his base. That's pretty interesting to see. It is going to get spotted by these vultures that are coming across right now, but it's okay because that automatically that starts to form the wall that he's going to put at his third base later to deal with vultures. So it's not a huge deal for him right now. He's just going to get the first Reaver and put some pressure on the Terran player, force Mine to keep his tanks back home, and he's just going to take a fast third base. Really nice little micro trick there from Snow. He's going to take his third base really early before he even gets a Citadel of a Dune or even Observers out. So he's going to be in pretty prime spot to hit a mid to late game timing. I wonder if he's going to go straight into the carriers super greedy after this as well. Honestly, I think he's so far ahead that he could probably get away with it. A couple more vultures going to come in. They're going to scout this third base. So Mind knows what's up. He knows that his opponent has taken this very early, greedy third base. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot that he can do with it. The Reaver drop is on its way across the map right now. He's already a little bit behind in terms of economy and his tank count. So he's going to have a little bit of trouble actually dealing with it. And actually putting pressure back onto this third base. The wall is already formed at the third base, so he can easily transfer drones over there, or rather, probes over there, and take care of that easy peasy. Snow's gonna just take his time. He's gonna pick off this third base. He doesn't... What I always say about Reaver drops is you don't have to do a bunch of damage with them. It's the nice thing about Reaver drops. They're not... Reaver drops aren't designed to outright win the game or get huge SCV hits in this matchup. They're mostly just designed to keep the Terran pin back so that they have to leave a couple of units at home, and this prevents any sort of early rushes. You don't have to do damage. It's just a control build. I really like it. So I'd like to look at Snow's base pretty soon and see what he's going into. I wonder if he's going straight into the carrier or if he's going to go for something else. I love these mines behind the mineral line. That's actually so cool to see. Very clever play there from Mine. The Zealot does soak up all the shots though, so it's not a huge deal for Snow. He keeps his Reaver alive. He doesn't take too much damage on it. And he's just going to continue to flit around here and see if he can find any openings into his opponent's base. Meanwhile, Mind is just stuck in his base, can't really do anything at this particular moment in time. And it actually looks like Snow is gearing up to take a fourth base as well. He feels pretty confident in the amount of pressure that he's been able to apply so far. He's going to start going into the main pretty soon. Wow, nice micro there. He actually managed to avoid taking splash damage from that mine and keep that Reaver alive. So the longer this Reaver harass keeps going, the longer Mind isn't going to be able to actually do anything. Unfortunately, Dear Men left the game. Goodbye, Dear Men. We will miss you. I don't think it matters too much, guys. And another drop, potential drop coming in here, but missile turret there in the middle line this time. That's going to be pushed back. And Snow is going to be taking a very early fourth base. Usually when he goes for this build, that's when he's getting the carriers up. He goes automatically for the 2 Stargate carrier, and then works on adding all of his gateway tech later. Gets his Citadel of Doom after, gets his Templar Archives after, and focuses mostly on just getting a lot of carriers early on, while just using a base minimum number of Dragoons to keep the Terran from actually pushing in, while he saves up enough money to actually get all the gateways that he needs. And he usually goes up to like a crazy amount of gateways in the mid-late game, up to 10 plus in his main. So it's pretty insane how strong Snow's PvT is right now. He's got a really cool game plan, and the way that he does it is so neat. Yeah, there is the double Stargate carrier as expected. This is just how he likes to play it. Mine is going to try to push out right now and hit the pre-carrier timing, but with the Reaver here and good micro on these Dragoons, he should be able to prevent this from pushing too far forward. Unfortunately, trading a lot of Dragoons without killing off any of the tanks, so that wasn't the greatest play that we've seen from Snow so far, but he did manage to slow it down a little bit. That might give him just enough time to get all 4 of those carriers out. Only still sitting at 6 gateways right now, so it's going to be a bit of a difficult position for him to actually hold this off for an extended period of time. He's going to try to be cute with these Reaver drops, get in as much damage as possible, and prepare the flank. And actually, he's just going to evacuate this fourth base. He knows that the fourth base is not a big deal. It's just a gigantic target for his opponent to deal with. He can go ahead and pull all the probes, sack it, and just wait for his carriers to come up. I think that's a very smart idea. Snow is very clever about the way that he will actually just sacrifice everything that he needs to in order to beat this initial push, because he knows as long as he can actually get up the carrier count that he needs, as long as he can get the infrastructure, then he's going to be able to deal with this push and completely obliterate it and take back map control very quickly in the game. Although I do still wonder about the efficacy of going carriers on every single map. That is something that has always I've questioned quite a bit, because even though he's refined this build very nicely and it works very well on some maps, on larger maps that have big open centers like this one, carriers aren't as effective. They don't seem to get as much done, and especially if the Terran player does very smart tactical plays like we just saw Mine do. Now he's up in bases. He managed to keep his entire force alive that he pushed out with, minus some of the vultures that got suicided. But I don't know, Snow is trying to get offensive, but with Mind setting back on all these bases, he's going to be in a pretty good spot to actually defend this. He's got the choke going up at his natural with these supply depots, and he's just going to be able to sit tanks behind that and just completely destroy any of the Dragoons that try to get too close. Meanwhile, actually, looks like Mind is actually going to be taking the top right-hand base. Maybe a hidden base up there. No, it looks like maybe he was just scouting with a vulture, so that's probably good. But Snow's actually just going to split the map vertically. He's going to go for that base in the bottom left-hand corner and start trying to force Mind to actually react to him, force Mind to try to slow down the Protoss economy. And behind this, he can do all kinds of crazy counterattacks and things like that. The nice thing about getting a critical mass of carriers when you get 4 to 6 is you can start going for counterattacks while your opponent's going for big death pushes, and you can end up doing quite a bit of damage to the economy of your opponent by killing off, for instance, CCs, killing off lots of SEVs. And if your opponent has all of their Goliaths forward to try to deal with carriers back at home, then you're going to be 100% fine. It's not a big deal. You can see the interceptors just kind of slightly lagging behind the carriers. That's a little micro trick that you can do, where if you just press stop on the carriers and walk away, the interceptors won't actually go inside the carriers, and they'll launch all at once instead of one by one. So basically, you just have instant DPS on whichever target you want. The only downside is you have to keep them moving constantly. So if you want to do carrier micro well, you just have to be on top of it at all times. So it looks like Snow's actually going to be prepared to do a counterattack right now. He knows that Mind wants to push across the map right now, and he wants to start getting very aggressive on this fourth base, maybe breaking down that wall and pushing in. But Mind has got it on lockdown. Snow's going to try to abuse this high ground area, but this is a little bit of a questionable place to engage for Snow. He's going to try to shave off as many of these Goliaths and gas units as much as possible. It makes a lot of sense. This is kind of a different take on the classic PBT, where you always try to trade minerals for gas. You want to trade zealots for gas units like Goliaths, like tanks, and then basically back off of the Dragoons, replenish your zealots, and go again. This is the same kind of concept, but this time you're doing it with interceptors. You're trading a bunch of interceptors for Goliaths, but over time it will actually go in your favor, because even though you're trading somewhat inefficiently, you are slowing down the Terran's gas supply, and it makes it much harder to actually remass the tanks later on in the game. So as long as you crush this army at least once, there's a good chance that Terran won't actually have enough gas to continually remax. And very risky probe transfer over there from Snow, but he does manage to actually get that over to his fifth base down in the bottom left-hand corner. And I assume there's some cannons there, so he'll be able to deal with that pretty nicely. And at this point, Mind is just trying to look for an opening in his opponent's armor, but Snow's doing a really good job of just picking away units wherever he can. He needs to be a little bit careful about his carrier position, make sure he doesn't lose, make sure that the Goliaths can't actually get underneath it, because Goliaths will kill carriers so fast. And here comes sort of an engage from Snow. I think he's just trying to bait out the siege on siege as much as possible while whittling things away with these carriers. He's actually going to evacuate this base. He thinks there's a possibility that it might actually go down, and he's just going to try to trade the best that he can with these Goliaths. Again, this is a great trade for him as long as he doesn't lose too many Dragoons off the backside of this. He's traded a lot of minerals for gas, and now the real key becomes, can he beat this army once? Because if he can't actually kill Mind's army, obviously he's not going to be able to break out of this contain, and he's going to find himself falling further and further behind. But if he does manage to, it actually makes him so much further than he would be ahead in other circumstances, just because he's trading so much minerals for gas. This is not a bad place for Snow to be. Mind is desperately trying to find an opening into his opponent to actually get in, but clumping up on this ramp, and that Reaver is going to get some really nice hits coming in. But really good for tanks as well, and Mind really wants control over the top side of this ramp. That almost guarantees that he'll actually be able to get this Nexus, and Snow again just abandoning the base, saying, I don't think I can actually defend this right now. I think I'm just going to keep that, just let the Terran have that. And that's a very interesting way of doing it. Snow continually just backing off whenever necessary. I have no idea what Jaedong is doing right now. You guys can't see the screen, but Jaedong is doing weird stuff. Very nice from Snow to actually scout out this base up in the top right-hand corner. So even if mine does kill off this third base, maybe even if he gets this fourth base, the economy isn't that bad for Snow. He's going to be more or less still matching his opponent. But the scary thing is now mine has positioning in this natural, and so the push could come in here and completely destroy it. It really all comes down to whether or not Snow has the resources to actually kill this off. I feel like his gateway count has just been a little bit lower than we see it in past times, and his carrier micro hasn't been absolutely perfect. He's lost a couple of carriers, and when you go for this type of style, you really can't afford to lose any carriers at all. You have to be very on top of your carrier micro at all points in time. I'm sure there's a very important battle going on right now, but Jaedong is looking at his phone or whatever, so we're not going to be able to see it. Snow actually going for this expansion down in the natural in the bottom right-hand corner now. Good stuff from him, so he's going to continually get the economy. Mine surprisingly not sending out any vulture scouting parties. Just a 4 vulture scouting party could spell absolute disaster for this base over here, but as of right now, it gives a chance for Snow to actually reinforce and make sure that base doesn't actually get destroyed. And meanwhile, the armies are moving across the middle of the map again. We're probably going to be seeing another big engagement, but Snow has done a really good job so far of cutting with these carriers, despite not really having good ground to do it with. He's going to try to use this lip right here to do as much as possible, but this base over at the 9 o'clock position is going to go down, and that's really unfortunate for him. But the tanks are a little bit separated. This is a good chance for him to snipe a couple of them and lower the tank count for the remainder of his units, but he's playing really far up with these carriers. I'm a little bit afraid that he's going to lose too many interceptors there. I like this play going for the cannon farm over here. He's just going to try to defend this for as long as possible and keep his probes safe, because these probes are a really big part of the next couple of minutes. But slowly, mine is starting to claw his way back into the game, and it's amazing considering how ugly the early game was. One of these carriers way out of position might even go down to some focus fire. Not the best play there from Snow, but he does manage to actually kill off a couple more Goliaths. Still, this is no longer any good for Snow. He had to give up too much to this push and not enough efficiency with these carriers and on this particular map. Without the backstab potential, without the ability to really abuse areas in the middle of the map, it's been much harder for him to actually snipe units the way that he wanted to. He's going to try to do some stuff with clever DT moves, but DTs will only get you so far. It's not going to save you from the impending push that's coming into this base now in the bottom left-hand corner. And he's trying to, it looks like he tried to do a Reaver drop down in that area, or maybe a Storm drop. No idea if that actually went well, since SCPs don't leave corpses. But mine is doing pretty well for himself overall. He's got that top right base finally established. So as long as he just manages to hold on and avoid taking way too much damage from drop play or anything like that, he's going to be okay. Snow, meanwhile, is going to go ahead and push out. You see up to 9 gateways. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go to 11 or more at some point in time, but his economy has been crippled so much in the last couple of minutes. He hasn't really had the chance to get up to that. And the main thing that we're missing from Snow is there just aren't a lot of Zealots in his army. And Zealots are the one thing that does really, really well against Goliaths. Goliaths are one of those things that you build the carriers and then the Terran builds a lot of Goliaths, and that can be really problematic. But then that just makes their ground army a lot weaker to Zealots. You just walk on them with Zealots. Sen says, what happens on APM? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. But it looks like their APM is a little bit low, all things considered. When you consider Korean players, you kind of expect like 300 plus, but Snow has a rather low APM, generally sitting at like 250 or lower. And you can see it's dropping quite a bit right now. It seems like maybe he's just sort of giving up. He doesn't have the economy that he wants. He's trying to attack in 2 different locations, but he hasn't been able to break this base, and reinforcements are going to be able to clean that up. Luckily, he did get that mineral-only expansion over by his main, but his main and his natural are completely dried out now. He's relying heavily on these bases down in the bottom left-hand corner, but there's a straight reinforcement path over there by mine. He's going to be able to deal with this in the future. There's that carrier microchip I was talking about earlier, just getting the interceptors right out so that you can just immediately launch and have 100% DPS without waiting for the carriers to come out one by one. But mine has gathered all his forces. He's finally going to come down to this bottom corner. And Stone's going to try counterattack on the top right, which might work for a little while. And these DTs will probably do some cute stuff. But this is a pretty big army from Mine. Mine going for the push in here. Will he be able to actually break this? I feel like the end is pretty inevitable, but actually Snow doing quite a bit of damage up in the top right and slowing down that. Now this actually kind of turns the tables. Mine didn't really have any defense up there, and this is kind of an all-in for Mind. But Snow, GG's. He didn't do enough damage, ended up losing too many carriers in the end.